Hi guys! Mabuhay! It's me, your girl, InDaynaMo! Welcome back to my Taglish channel! Hello guys! How are you all on either side of the universe? So guys, for today's video, this is an interesting video guys. So it's a history. So guys, ng Australia. So guys, are you ready? What are we waiting for? Happy watching!
Now, who wasn't here for the introduction? Come around where I can see you, front on. You can separate a bit if you like, if you're worried about COVID. Okay. What have I got to tell you? I better just briefly do the introduction again, because some haven't heard. I'm Geraldine. My husband and I used to run a little tour business in the town for many years, and I have an agreement with the Department of Defence to take the public through in the quiet times, weekdays. Today's a bit of an out-of-the-box one. My average group is usually only about 10 people. But anyway, it's lovely to see you all. And the weather hasn't come in bad yet, so we might just get the tour done. The tour takes about an hour and a half. Carry a mask if you've got one, because we do go into the underground magazine. We'll be a bit crowded today, we'll be close contact. It's up to you, it's your choice. You've signed in, you know, this is a working military establishment. So I would like to say, welcome on behalf of the Department of Defence. Now, you're all Victorians, except one from Hobart. There's no other interstaters.
And New South Wales.
We're from in New South Wales?
Wollongong.
Wollongong, lovely. Well, you're not all Victorians, but I'm going to give you some Victorian history. The children might have heard some of this history at school, I'm not sure. Tell me if I lower my voice. I've got a weak little voice. The history of Victoria. We'll start back in the year 1850 when we were a little British colony. Hello. You just arrived, have you? I'm Geraldine and I'll take $30, please. You're Victorians? Yes, I've got change. I'll just get the photos out. I'm going to pass some photos around while I'll take your money in a minute. Little British colony in 1850, and then something big happened in Victoria, and everybody knows what that is. We discovered gold, and we were, as you know, pulling the gold out of those mines by the ton. According to Geoffrey Blaney, our eminent historian, in those days, Melbourne was the richest city in the world per capita. And nobody gave that much thought, but then in 1853, England went to war with Russia, and the Russians had a Pacific fleet, and there was nobody here, and we were British, for a Russian ship to sail into Port Phillip and taken the rich gold port of Melbourne to ransom. Well, they had to do something, the British government and the Victorian Parliament, about the defence of Melbourne. The first thing they did, they bought 3 big guns and put them on the cliff down here, over there. Now, there were no soldiers here straight away, so they formed a civilian militia amongst the locals. And I'll send them that way. They couldn't have been too worried about the Russians, because I read that they only manned the guns 3 days a week. They wouldn't have seen them coming. Now, that photograph is all the civilian militia all standing posing for the photograph. And you can see the 3 guns on the cliff. Over the years, they added more guns. You can see those walls over there. They built underground magazines to house the ammunition. Here they are, the walls are built and the magazines are built and they're firing the guns. Eventually, the Victorian Permanent Artillery came in, and they were on parade on the parade ground there. And of course the uniform in those days was the old British uniform, navy blue with a white leather belt, a white helmet with a gold spike going up through the top. So Fort Queenscliff became an artillery and engineering garrison. Then in 1882 they commenced the walls. The walls took 3 years to build, and look at the height of the firing slots. We didn't have particularly tall soldiers, they put a mound around the inside. It was put at a height that would enable a rifleman to kneel and fire their rifles through the firing slots. When they finished the walls in 1885, they dug a moat around. You know what a moat is, don't you? A moat around 3 sides of the fort. There was no need to have the moat over here on the cliff top. But the moat was 6 metres wide by 6 metres deep, and it was a dry moat. And there they are digging the moat. So as I said, Fort Queenscliff became an artillery and engineering garrison. And they were here from 1947. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself. 2 years after the Second World War, now where am I up to? Yes, they became an artillery and engineering garrison, and with the walls of the moat. Then 2 years after the Second World War, the artillery marched out and the place was empty. I guess they went back to Melbourne, I'm not sure. So it was then that the Army decided to use Fort Queenscliff for the Australian Army Command and Staff College. Is there any old soldiers here? No? No old soldiers? Well, every Commonwealth country has a staff college. In Australia, we choose 60 Australian officers at the rank of Major. They're handpicked to do a 12-month tertiary course, and that enables them to climb the ladder of promotion. We also choose approximately 20 officers from overseas countries, mainly Southeast Asia. I got used to seeing officers in uniform from India, Pakistan, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, that's all right, Papua New Guinea, the Philippines, thank you. And always represented at the college is Great Britain, Canada, New Zealand and the US. So it was a great place when the college was here. They had beautiful gardens. Their families were housed in the town. We townspeople used to come into the drill hall to all the concerts and plays. Every November they had a ceremonial parade that went back to the time of Napoleon called Beating the Retreat. We'd all come in with our thermoses and our chairs and watch the Beating the Retreat, and then at the end of the night the Army Orchestra would play the 1812 Overture, and they'd bring in big cannons and fire them, and there was fireworks. So when the college was here, it was a great place. They built the old brick building around the corner for the college in 1947, and it's called the Syndicates, which is the same as saying the classrooms. The big modern building was built for the college in the 1980s, and that was a state-of-the-art university. Then along came the year 2000, and the Army sent the college to Canberra to co-locate with the Navy and the Air Force. It's not officer training, and we don't use the terms a lot, Army, Navy, Air Force now, it's all defence. So the college went, and the place was empty, and the schools suffered, you know. And you can imagine how many people would like to get their hands on this prized piece of real estate. I mean, developers would love to get hold of it. The Department of Tourism would love to get hold of it. But the Army decided to retain it. They did try a few units in here for a while, but they all went. But today that modern building is the headquarters of the Australian National Archives. It's a holiday today, but there's usually about 50 public servants working in there for defence. So they're hanging on to it, and we're keeping the Army history alive. This is when the college left, the place started to go to rack and ruin. The window frames were rotting, the guns were rusting. It was really bad. They sacked the gardener when the college left, and all the shrubs and gardens got pulled out. But at the beginning of last year, Defence accepted a quote of just under $6 million to restore the fort for our heritage. The workmen have gone now, so any restoration Defence is doing is being done. There's still a couple of old buildings that need a lot of attention. I don't know who's going to pay for them. Okay, now, any questions? I think the best idea is when I'm walking around, if you've got any questions, come and ask me. Thank you. In the 1970s, 3 of our Victoria Cross winners planted 3 shrubs around the corner here, and their names were on plaques. Anyway, when the gardener got sacked and the college left, they ripped the shrubs out. So this memorial was built in honour of these three men. The one on the left, the plaque is a man named Moon. He was a First World War veteran from Geelong. Don't know a lot about him. Geelong people might. The one on the other side is Ted Kenner. Ted Kenner lived in Hamilton, Victoria. He gained the Victoria Cross in New Guinea in the Second World War. And the one in the middle you've all heard of, Sir Roden Cutler, famous Australian, ex-Governor of New South Wales, ex-diplomat. He gained the Victoria Cross in Syria at the age of 19 and lost a leg. Now I read his biography and the author makes the comment that nearly 1 million Australians took part in the Second World War, 20 of these cities. So they're very special, aren't they? I'm just going to hand around in a minute while we're walking a photograph, a newspaper cutting. That's Sir Roden Cutler, the man with the wooden leg, and that's Ted Kenner. This is a Payne, his name's Payne, he was Vietnam. We haven't got his memorial here. I'll pass that around. And I think somewhere I've got a replica of the Victoria Cross. The Victoria Cross, the highest award for bravery, was commissioned by Prince Albert, husband of Queen Victoria. And apparently the Queen wanted a plain cross for the plain soldier. So you really couldn't get a plainer medal even when you put it beside all the shiny ones. But as you know, it's very, very special. You can pass. Give this back to me. This is precious. An Englishman gave it to my husband when he was doing the tour one day. It's a complete replica. Here you are.
Not the real thing.
Now, while you're looking at those, we're going to go around the back of the guardhouse. We're going to tape off in a minute around the insides of the walls. But we'll go around the back of the guardhouse and have a look at the cell block. Now, the cells are famous. The cells achieved notoriety in the year 1912 with the guardhouse. They're the first army buildings to be built. Could you pick up that for me? Thank you, darling. Thank you very much. 1912, 2 years before the First World War, a group of 15-year-old boys were locked in them for 3 months for failing to comply with the National Service regulations. Apparently they had like an army reserve, and all the young fellows had to turn up in Melbourne Saturday afternoon on parade in uniform. Anyway, this group didn't. So they were caught, charged and sentenced to 3 months in the Queenscliff cells. Well, it was a big outcry in Melbourne. It was in all the newspapers. It didn't make any difference to the army. They were loaded onto the train and sent down to Queenscliff. Now you can't see in the cells because there's no windows, but your children might like to look in the middle cell and get your eyes used to the dark. And you'll see a fellow in the left-hand corner under a blanket on a mattress. See his head poking out. Come and have a look.
Welcome to Queenscliff. It's a historic fortification located in Queenscliff, Victoria, Australia.
Okay, now I go walk ahead and I start talking as soon as I stop. Some of you might choose to not keep up with me, but I will keep talking. And any questions you want to ask me, ask on the way around. The iron bars go up the wall, across the roof and across the floor. Do you want to go and look for that fellow in the middle one? Down in the left-hand corner. There's one in the cells. I think the most he obviously laughed at the wrong person or at the wrong time. Now in 1987, the ABC had a series on television called Winners, and one of the movies they showed was called Boys Soldiers, and it's all about these boys that were locked in the cells. You could probably follow it up through YouTube. The name of the series is Winners, and the movie is Boys Soldiers. It was all filmed here in 1987. The story of the film concentrates on one of the boys who was a conscientious objector, and they used to go out on work parties. He was the one that got all the lousy jobs and got bullied. Right, now I'm going to head off up around the insides of the wall. Did you see that though? Yeah, it's a bit hard. It is
Queenscliff is situated at Shortlands Bluff in Queenscliff, a coastal town located on the Bellarine Peninsula at the entrance to Port Philippi, approximately 100 kilometers southwest of Melbourne. The fort was constructed in the mid-19th century to protect the entrance to Port Philippi and the city of Melbourne from potential enemy attacks. It played a crucial role in Australia's defense strategy during times of conflict, including the Crimean War, World War I, and World War II. Guided tours of Fort Queenscliff are available for visitors who wish to explore the fort and learn about its history from knowledgeable tour guides. The tours typically include visits to key sites within the fort, such as the gun emplacements, underground tunnels, and museum displays.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? The bricks came from Geelong, because Geelong's as old as Melbourne. And when the early settlers came to Geelong, the first thing they built, besides their houses, was brick walls. Okay, you're looking at the oldest government buildings in the town. They were here before the walls were built and before the army came. That bit was stored all putting up. They're mainly empty. There's 3 offices on the bottom floor used by the Heritage Administration. The old, oh, you're looking at the back of them, by the way. I'll tell you all about them when we get around the front. The oldest government buildings and the walls have been classified A under our National Trust to be preserved for all time. Now here's the oldest gun in the fort. Pretty old. It's forged in Scotland in 1810. It came to Australia on our first warship, the warship Victoria, and immediately went to New Zealand to fight the Maori Wars. You children seen the way they load these old guns at the movies? How?
They grab the gun and we'll pull it through the front.
Push a bag of gunpowder down first, down the muzzle, then a wad, and then your projectile, your cannonball, which was about that big. Push it right down to the end. And all you have to do is light a wick into the gunpowder, and it will go off like a firecracker. And of course you didn't stand here, did you?
No.
Why? Why didn't I stand here?
Recoil.
Yes, it had a big recoil. I'd been squashed up against the wall. It had a range of about a mile. Now, I said it was smooth bore, and some of you might know what the rifling of the guns means, but I know some of you won't. Smooth bore is smooth inside the barrel. The rifling, what they did, they put grooves in the barrel at a later date, and that would put a spin on the shell and think the shot went further and was more accurate. So later on, when I talk about the rifling of the guns, you'll know what I'm talking about. Okay, now I've got a family story coming up. My husband's family go back in this area 6 generations. Old Granny Ferris is out in the Lonsdale Cemetery. She was one of the first white women here. Anyway, my husband's grandfather, he was on the Victoria when it sailed up to Queensland and dropped a search party off at Rockhampton for Wills. Now, some of you know who Wills is. If you're older, you learnt about them at school, but some of you don't. Do you children know? Do you know? Shout, I can't hear you.
We did history in school about Australia. We know.
I'm so pleased. I'm really pleased because they're just not teaching a lot of Australian history these days. Who doesn't know about Wills? Children do. You all know. Oh, good, good. Do you know, all this last 2 weeks, all I've had in the middle of the week is interstate people, and a lot of the young ones along the road here to the end of the corner of the walls is the keep. And I guess they've got keeps on all castles.
Maybe.
No, together though.
Yeah.
Together. You've got glasses on, didn't see your eyes. I thought she might have been Japanese.
Back there, I thought it was with one of the or number one. That's right, I'm taking photos from my website anyway, so you can use those.
Windows are strategically placed so they could see along the walls. The windows around the front look toward what we call the Narrows. You know how Queenscliff's joined to the mainland by a very narrow neck of land. Well, they obviously thought when they designed the fort, the enemy might anchor around the coast and sneak across by land. So the keep, the walls, the moat were all built for a landward attack. I personally think the whole place was pretty obsolete when it was built. But we had to build a British standard design. The man that designed it is a man named Scratchley. He also designed Fort Scratchley in Newcastle, New South Wales. Where did the New South Wales people come from? I've forgotten.
Wollongong.
Wollongong. We know of Fort Scratchley. There's only about 4 wall fortresses in Australia. There's this one, Fort Scratchley, and 2 in South Australia. Yes. By the way, there's the mound that was put at a height that would enable the riflemen to kneel and fire their rifles through the firing slots. That white mark on the wall, that used to be a building. Years ago when I was young, I met a lady and she said, Dad used to run the cordial factory in the fort. And I've got a photograph, I found a photograph of Sergeant Wilding and his cordial factory. Obviously there was no alcohol allowed on the base, but I've found out since Sergeant Wilding always had some alcohol under the counter. So you can have a look at it if you like and just pass it around. That's hysterical.
Theory water factory, I love it.
A lot of the old bottles have been found in the cordial factory.
Birds.
These were just stores, old army huts, stores. But they've been reclassified. See the twirly bits on the top there? Have got historical significance. This one hasn't. Look at it. When the college left in 2000, this was their gymnasium. So they went to Canberra and took all their equipment, and white ants were found in the walls. So it was condemned, and that was in 2000. So they're going to have to pull it down one day. So what they do, they dig a big hole, line it with concrete and catch the stormwater. When we first moved down here, when my children were little, in 72, we had a weekender up the street of these in the backyard, and I remember, you know, when you've got a Victorian house, you're looking to be Victorian. My husband searched everywhere for authentic pump for it. He ended up getting one. Next door, he realised his Oh, that's better. Come over on the grass here. Oh, look, there's a dead pigeon.
The museum at Fort Queenscliff features a range of historic display and exhibits related to Australia's military history, including photographs, document maps, and personal stories of soldiers who served at the fort over the years. Visitors can gain insight into the challenges and triumphs of military life at Fort Queenscliff.
There is room for a third person if you want to. Okay, these guns. Now they were donated to the fort some years ago. They were found buried up near Bendigo. And local TAFE students in Geelong built that carriage. This carriage was rotting like wood does, so they directed the build. These guns are interesting. Don't worry about him. Could be a lot worse than your baby's crying, couldn't it? These old guns were like the one you just looked at. They were smooth ball when they were built. But then they are special now because they were converted. They put the rifle in. Now the oldest government buildings in the town, this one behind me, is the first to be built. 1810, oh wait a minute, 1838 I think. No, I'm wrong. Gee, I'm getting old, I'm getting the dates mixed up. 1854. That was the old telegraph station. It was also used as a post office and a police station. I believe when the walls were built and the army came in, the public servants that worked here got very disgruntled and they applied to the government to build a post office in a main street, Hesse Street, and still there. The story is that the ladies were upset because the soldiers were whistling when they came to the post office. They didn't like it. This building here is 5 terrace cottages built for the lighthouse keepers and their families. Now they used to live up here in tents before the government built them those cottages. You can imagine what it would be like here in the middle of winter with a howling gale off Antarctica. They'd have been very happy to get their cottages. They're not the kind we built with the view that we've got here. That's the kind they built in those days. Behind you is the old signal station, and they didn't restore it, so I don't know who's going to pay for that, but it's got to be restored. When it was built, it was the 2 wooden stories high. And I've got to pass a photograph around here of it. Had a great big flagpole going up through the middle, and when the ships came to their heads, they could signal by flag, semaphore. Now it took a ship 3 to 4 months to come out from England in those days, so it was important to get those messages across. And in 1936, the army built these red brick barracks here, and they blocked out the view of the old signal station. So you can see what they've done. They've just jacked it up on vast jacks and put the ground floor in. It's the only building I've ever seen where the ground floor's gone in 80 years after the first and second. I don't say another word about government departments. Lack of communication. Just behind you here is a man-made man-made mound, and the entrance over there in the corner is the entrance to the moat gun. Now there was a gun at the end of the moat there, and there's still a bit of the moat there. If you wanted to later, you could drive around near the water down there. There's a lovely little park there with a lovely view. So you'll see where the moat gun was. The mound was built to house the ammunition for the moat gun. It's about 8 of these magazines that house the ammunition in the fort. We go down into one round the other side. So that's what all that's for. All right, now what I'm going to do now, I want to tell you about the lighthouse, but we want to be looking at it. So see that brown wall over there? I'll take that first. I'm going to sit on that seat, and we'll get out of the window with the fence there. So, and I want to tell you before you go up and look at the view, I want to tell you what the job of the lighthouse is.
Is it coming out of the signal station?
Pardon?
Do you know what date?
That's good. It's not just a hole in the ground.
Fort Queenscliff hosts a variety of events and activities throughout the year, including reenactments, military displays, commemorative services, and special tours. These events provide opportunities for visitors to engage with Australia's military heritage and experience the fort's history firsthand. The fort is generally accessible to visitors of all ages and abilities, although some areas may have limited accessibility due to the historic nature of the site. Visitors are advised to wear comfortable footwear and dress approximately for walking and exploring the fort.
Well, you like holding it or something. So is that point to penal like?
Southwest. That's the heads where my funds are. We're on the tip of the Bellarine, and that's the Mornington Peninsula over there. We've got one lady from Hobart and a couple from New South Wales, so I'll have to go into it all. You know it, do you? Yeah. Now, Port Phillip is very shallow. It's only, the average depth's only 5 metres. And out the heads here, it's even more shallow. There's rock ledges out here. So the South Channel comes down from Melbourne, the main shipping channel, down the other side of the bay, does a right-hand turn and goes out through the heads. It's believed that the South Channel was the River Yarra many moons ago, before there was any water in the bay, when it was a big valley. We also have the West Channel coming down. We believe it was the bed of the Werribee River, and that's silted up now. The ships don't use it. The Geelong ships used to take the West Channel around to Corio Bay, but now it's silting up. The Geelong ships have to go over right out the other side on the South Channel and come across in deep water. Where the two channels meet over here at Portsea, they plunge to a hole of 100 metres, and that can continues on in a deep gorge out through the entrance. So the early settlers woke up pretty soon that they had a problem out here. Today it's the graveyard of hundreds and hundreds of shipwrecks because the channel is a riverbed, the old Yarra, and they're not very wide. So you get a big southwesterly blow and then ships went in 1838, that's really before Melbourne really got started. A sea pilot called George Tobin set up camp on the beach down here with his crew and a big whaleboat, and they used to row George Tobin out and transfer him onto the sailing ships to bring him through. Today the Port Phillip Sea Pilots are a company of about 30 men. They've been a private company since their inception in 1838. They charge big money to bring a ship through. We do have a few local traders where the skippers are licensed and they know the rip, and the two Tasmanian car ferries, the skippers are licensed. The majority of ships must be piloted through this law. Now George Tobin had to find a way of finding the mouth of the channel. He was in charge of a big sailing ship, and it became very obvious that they needed some sort of a beacon or Queenscliff. She'd like to line the ship up on this beacon or Queenscliff. You know then you're safe at the entrance of the channel. They built a lighthouse here first. I'll pass it around. There's no walls built. And it was beautiful. Sandstone from the base of the cliff, and it was going to deteriorate. So in the end they pulled it down. That's an obelisk they use for shipping too. Pass that around. So eventually in 1863 twin lighthouses were built to guide the ship through the heads. This one's got a twin around the corner painted white. I guess the first thing they did was get out British standard design plans for lighthouses. I used to read when I was young that in tourist brochures, the bluestone for the Queenscliff lighthouses came all the way from Great Britain by ship, and every stone was cut and numbered. It was a good story, but it's not true. That's basalt from a quarry on the Melbourne. And if you think about Melbourne, all the old rocks and roads, even the paving of the city is this basalt. It's the same colour as bluestone. It's still called bluestone, but it's a little bit stronger and harder than bluestone. Another thing the plans would have said is build a door 3 or 4 metres above the ground. Well, you can just imagine saying we're on a 75-foot cliff. We don't have to worry about big seas. So you can see where they brought the door down to ground level and done a patch-up job where the door should have been.
Oh, I see.
Now, both lighthouses were completed in 1863. They're the only two you'll see built as a pair in Victoria. They're the only two built out of that basalt from the Melbourne quarry. And this is the only Blacktown lighthouse, remember this children, the only Blacktown lighthouse in the southern hemisphere. So I guess if you want to see another one, you'll have to go to Scandinavia or Scotland or somewhere. Why is it black? Has anybody read why it's black?
That's all.
Pardon? You know.
It's volcanic.
Yes, but why? Well, all lighthouses are painted white. All coastal lights.
We got 2. You can't have one without. You got to have 2 different ones.
She
I
studies
did my
light.
homework.
She knows all about lighthouses. Yes, you imagine today if that was painted white with all that white cloud and the pilot's trying to line up the ship opposite the white one down below and the black one, he wouldn't be able to differentiate. So because it's a leading light and because it's on a hill, it's white, it's black. It's a shipping leading. And I guess when you're out to see the white lighthouse, it's twin around the water. It's got the land behind it. It's easy to distinguish. What do you think they used for fuel for the early light? No electricity, no coal mines, no nothing. What do they use for fuel? Do you know?
Oil?
What kind of oil?
Gas?
No, you're on the right track. It's oil. Well, what
Yeah,
kind of oil?
this lady said it.
Whale oil.
Whale oil.
Wow.
Whale oil. We were slaughtering the whales around our coastline in the hundreds, weren't we?
Mhm.
Every state has got a whaling station. I think the last one to close was Albany in the west, closed in the 1970s. Now I've got another family story. My eldest son is a seaman, and he DNA off the Antarctic blue whale. Now we have every species of whale come up from Antarctica, don't we? We all go whale watching, never see a blue whale. The biggest creatures on earth, they never come near land. Anybody know why? They had a good trip. They tracked the sonar and they got their DNA and they put a tag on them. And 2 Antarctic blue whales are named after my 2 grandsons. So why don't they come near? Pardon? No, no, it's very deep.
They probably remembered when they were slaughtered. They're not silly.
They're like elephants. They've got these huge brains and they remember the slaughtering of the whales. And so they never come near us. So that fascinated me and I looked up Google. I must get this laminated. And I got a photograph of a blue whale. It's not in Antarctica. I think it must be up near Canada or somewhere. So I'll show the children and then have a look at it. It gives you an idea of one of the biggest creatures on earth.
They were nearly extinct, basically.
Pardon?
They were nearly extinct. We
Yes.
nearly had killed them.
Yeah, well, they got their DNA and they've all got names and tags. Not that the tags last forever. Now, what we're going, oh, by the way, those guns were donated to the fort in the 1960s. They're all British naval guns. And a few years later, it was got them into working. Yes, so when the college was here, if a 5-star general or anybody came down, we'd have a salute. And then a soldier said to me one day, you know, these guns were on one of our warships in the Dardanelles in the First World War, which is not quite accurate, because Australia didn't have any warships in the Dardanelles in the First World War. We were British, weren't we? But we did have 2 submarines. But our troops were on British ships. So now, we're going to risk going up on the fence. It's very uncomfortable in this kind of weather. Seeing that you come from Victoria, I'm not going to elaborate on the scenery because you probably know it all. I'll point it out very quickly. And then I've got some photos to show you. And we'll go on, see
In addition to its historic significance, Fort Queenscliff offers stunning panoramic views of Port Philippi and the surrounding coastline. Visitors can enjoy breathtaking vistas from the fort's vantage points and observation posts, capturing the beauty of the bay and its natural surroundings.
So it's winter, it's probably like over there somewhere. Like Melbourne must be sort of that direction over there, I think.
It's only my height. The fence is only my height. It's not those trees.
Oh, I'm guessing where we are. I'm guessing the ferry station's over there somewhere. Oh, there's the thing there. That's the harbour. So that's the ferry terminal over there. No, not up here, but one on the other side of the whole corner.
Look at Melbourne.
Oh, I was looking at you over there somewhere. Oh, okay, so far distance.
This is the end, is it here?
It's around the corner here,
Oh, okay.
facing southwest. Okay. Point Nepean, always army land with Fort Nepean on the end. It's handed over to Victoria to it's handed over to Victoria Conservation and Natural Resources. about, they cut a cut through the land so the fishing fleet could anchor in the quiet waters of Swan Bay. So all that land between what was the fisherman's pier and the main pier used to be all water. Just goes to show what happens when you mess around with the coastline. The fisherman's pier is long gone. Before refrigeration, the first fishermen had come down. A lot of them were Chinese from the gold fields, and they would go fishing, and they'd bring the catch into the fisherman's pier, put it on the pier, pack it in boxes in ice, no refrigeration, and send it up to the markets of Melbourne. But of course now that's all land. Well, how it became land, they cut a cut through the land so the fishing fleet could anchor in the quiet waters of Swan Bay. So that's all a build-up of sand. Now it's all marina and shops and restaurants and everything. Okay, so I've got another photograph here. The main pier, there's two sheds on it. There's this shed on the end, which is the old lifeboat shed that they used to rescue people off the shipwrecks. If a ship was wrecked out on the rocks, they'd ring the wreck bell, and you can still see the wreck bell down in the park. And everybody with a boat would be out to rescue lives off the ship. And they'd launch the lifeboat from the old shed on the end of the pier. It'd slide down a ramp through the door, almost become airborne before it hit the water. They were very brave, the lifeboat crew. I'll tell you a couple of stories you won't read in the history books. The next night, some of the Queenscliff fishermen would go out and plunder the ship. I know that to be a fact because my mother-in-law was born here, and she could remember when she was a little girl, one day her mother burning a roll of silk under the copper, because the customs officers were searching for the loot on the ship. You know. I mean, her father wasn't a fisherman, he was a soldier, but they were obviously given a roll of silk. There's another story about a customs officer climbing a pine tree down in the park with a spyglass and finding a lot of the loot from the ship in the roofs of the fishermen's cottage. So they got into trouble a lot. There was no salvage rights out there. Am I dropping it?
There you go.
Now, just to sum it all up, I'll pass this around. This is the man-made cut taken from the air. You can pass it your way if you like. This is, now, at the turn of the century there was no motor car. Motor car came at the turn of the century. But we had a paddle steamer. And a paddle steamer would leave Melbourne, go to Mornington, Sorrento and Queenscliff and bring all the holiday makers down to Queenscliff for their holidays. So it was the turn of the century, which was the heyday of the town, where all our beautiful old guest houses and hotels were built. I've got a photograph here of the paddle steamer Waroona, the last one on the run, coming into the main pier. There is also a building just down here, but that's gone. That was the Salt Sea Baths. I mean, in the 1950s they were becoming very derelict. So what did they do? Pull them down. Yes. Here's a photograph of the motor car when it came on the scene. Okay. I've told you about the pilots, I've told you about the paddle steamer. To sum it all up, when you look down here, and you can drive around to the little park near the water tower, we started off a maritime town with the pilot service. So there's four aspects to our history. We became a garrison town with the military. Then we became a big holiday town with the paddle steamers bringing, the last Waroona used to take nearly 2,000 people. And then we were a fishing village. So they're the four aspects of our history. So it's a very unique town. You can pass that around. Oh, by the way, over on Swan Island, it's the furthest piece of land jutting out to your right. That's joined to Queenscliff by a bridge, and there's a guard on the bridge, and you're not allowed on Swan Island. Swan Island is a top Commonwealth Government top secret establishment. So I'm not even allowed to talk about it. But if you want to ask me what I've seen over the years, you can ask me later.
Thought there's a golf course on there as well.
Oh yes, but this end is all barbed wire off like a prison.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You can play golf, you can get a pass and go on. Now I'm just deciding whether we're going to continue walking around the cliff or whether we'll start going downstairs. We'll walk up, follow me up to the mound, next mound, and I'll point out a couple of things and then we'll decide whether we can bear the wind. When you walk along the path there towards the next big gun, that's where we'll stand. In the bush there's an unusual seat. Anyway, it's a very special seat, but it's got nothing to do with the fort. The local school children made all the mosaics, and they got a concreted to fashion a seat. Anyway, the schools contacted the commandant of the fort and said that the schools would like to donate a seat to the fort. And of course he said, oh yes, certainly, very happily said yes. And then we saw the seat. And it's plushes but everything. So I walked around with the curator of the museum, we put it there. Haven't we got any school teachers here? I really don't want to knock it. It's in the bush there and up on the cliff. It's in a good spot. I think it'll become a historical monument one day. We did choose the spot because there was a big tree that they cut the tree down. So have a look at it. Just stay on the mound there and I'll take
The ferry
you.
as well.
We'll step over.
Oh.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It's so slow.
Any reason when they built the ferry they went to Sorrento, not just to the closest end over here?
No, there used to be a little ferry, a little one, a couple of them, and they used to go to Sorrento ports in Queenscliff. Probably the depth of water.
Oh, okay. I thought, well, I guess the national park as well. But
No.
they're very full too. Yeah. Oh, that is very pangit. It's very pangit. Balik bayan. Oh, it's all wet. Oh, that is very eloquent.
So heavy. Very hard. Why not?
Just down here.
Yeah, look at that.
Why are we at the end? This is where the shop is. I thought.
Oh yeah.
We've been here before. And the shop's narrow.
She said we're gonna walk around to the back of the gun anyway.
Again.
Oh, serious about the Filipino pirates.
I'll tell you about that big gun, that big 6-inch Mark 7 gun. There were 3 of them on Fort Queenscliff, and they were the main armaments of the fort in the First World War and the beginning of the Second World War. I'm passing around a photo of that gun firing just before the Second World War. They used to fire at a target. 2 cone-shaped structures they fired between it. But it had a range of just over 11 miles, so you would have been a bit worried if you lived at Portsea, wouldn't you? When you look at the photo, the fellow down here with his hands behind his back, that's the Sergeant Major. He was, you can pass the line, he was my husband's uncle, and the most hated man in the fort, like Sergeant Majors are. You know, and he was a lovely gentleman, really. Okay, now, what else about the big gun? I counted, you children any good at maths? Can you count it and add up in your head? See how you go. I counted how many guns I counted around the fort before the wars. No, yeah, before the wars. Now there were more, but I didn't count them all. I know at one stage they had 13 guns on Queenscliff and Swan Island. 5 big ones and 8 small ones, 13. Then they put 2 in that bay over there, Lonsdale Bight. Another 2 onto that. No, don't say that loud. Then over on Fort Nepean they had 6 guns. And then over on the other side I pointed out to some of you the South Channel Fort, the man-made island. They had 6 guns. And then I mentioned the warship, the Cerberus, the flagship of Port Phillip. She had 4 guns. She was going to go in behind the stones and point her guns up over the stones. So how many did I count?
31.
31, very good. Yes. So you can see the rich gold port of Melbourne was one of the most heavily defended ports in the British Empire in those days.
That's around the
All
lid.
those stones we're going to walk
Oh, yeah.
past in a
Right,
minute.
with
The
all-
grey building on the mound there were controlled from the fire control. All the guns I mentioned around the heads. During the wars, they even electrically mined the shipping channel. There's a First World War mine there. You can read about it. And so I guess they only had to press a button in there and they could detonate the mine. Because there was a lot of activity going on in Bass Strait. In the Second World War, there was German U-boats that took out a lot of our merchant ships. There was Japanese were there with their submarines. There's one authentic story about a Japanese plane taking off a big Japanese submarine, flying in over the heads up to Melbourne, cruised around, a spy plane, and everybody didn't realise it was a Japanese. And until it flew back and went back onto its submarine. Okay, thank you, yes. Now, we're going to talk about the heads again. It's 3 kilometres between Point Nepean and Point Lonsdale. They look wide, but they're not, as I said, they're only as wide as a riverbed, and there's all rock ledges. So today you looked out there and it was really calm, but we're blowing a westerly, I think, and if it swings night and you can't see the lighthouses.
Lighthouses have traffic.
No, they have a light, a white light, and the ship lines up the white light. Here he is climbing up a rope ladder on up the side of the ship. There's the crewman harnessed to a rail on the launch. Pass that around. You can imagine what it'd be like for the pilot in those big seas. Here's another one. When they go down into the trough, they lose radar and everything. So have a look at them.
Lord.
Any questions? Try and rattle on and on, try and cover everything. This is a museum. This used to be the generator room in underground magazines. The museum was taken over by the Army History Unit about 10 years ago, and now they'll only open it when there's a soldier here. It's mainly of interest to old soldiers. It's got all glass cases and artefacts in it, you know. So if you want to see the museum, you'd have to come on one big group, and they'll open it for them, or weekends. All right, while you're looking at the photographs, I've got another story, not family story. 1980s, one day, a Japanese tanker came in, lined up the two lighthouses on Queenscliff, and came straight up onto the beach down here, near the white lighthouse. That was put down to pilot error. I believe his defence in court was that he forgot when he had a drink that he'd taken an antihistamine. So he was suspended, and they had to bring the tugs down to pull it off. If they go to the Maritime Museum, they won't talk about it. They're a bit ashamed. Here's a photograph to prove it. Big mistake.
God.
Thank you. Thank you. Everybody's seen these?
No. Did you see?
Here we are.
Here you go.
Right. Now we're going to walk across and go into the underground magazines.
Look at that.
You might like to put your mask on when we go downstairs.
I see.
Now it's pretty crowded, but when I come down, I'd like you all near the first passage, and I'll tell you I'm drinking water. It's empty, but I'll tell you about it. Okay, all photos in. Big mistake.
Big mistake. Big. That means it
Overall, Fort Queenscliff offers a fascinating glimpse into Australia's military history and provides an immersive experience for visitors interested in exploring the country's past and heritage.
We have to do the same thing at this ferry too. Yeah, thanks. We have to check in with the ferry as well. Like we have to go beforehand, give them tickets, and then. Oh, okay, I'm not running around, but why would we both get paired? But who and why? I'm not even connected to anyone.
In 1980, anyway, the Fort Queenscliff Museum had it sent up to the Bendigo Ordnance Factory. It was all, hello, did you have a little cry? It was all put together and restored. They brought it here in 1981. Anyway, by the beginning of last year, before the restoration, it was going rusty again. Now it's one of 4 restored in the world. They've restored 2 in New Zealand and 1 in Canada and this one. And there's none in Great Britain where they were built. I occasionally get people that say, usually they're from America or Germany, we've got those in our country. If they haven't, there's one over on Fort Nepean, but it's a 6-inch disappearing gun. It's not an 8-inch, there's only 4 8-inches. A photograph of it on the wall over there, being installed on the South Channel Fort in a down position. So when it's in the down position, they'd load it from the rear, a breech loader, and then they'd pump it up manually, and when it fires, you can see what it does. It just recoils onto its mounting and literally disappears out of sight. I used to think, what a sinister gun. If you're on the water being fired at, you look around, there'd be no gun. As I said, it's one of 4 restored in the world, 2 in New Zealand, 1 in Canada, and this one here. Had a range of about 6 miles, which wasn't bad for pre-First World War. The shell weighed 170 pounds. Those shells don't belong to this gun. The disappearing gun shells come about 3/4 of the height of those shells. These 2 shells are off an 11-inch gun on a First World War battleship. And to make it even more mysterious, they were found buried in a lady's backyard over near Swan Bay. And she donated them to the fort. So how they got there, I will never know. We didn't have any First World War battleships down here, did we? Okay, I'm going to pass around a photograph of this gun being installed. Not this gun. An 8-inch gun being installed. And that's just how many minutes it took to install it before machinery. I'm going to get the tickle now on the wall. If you want to put your mask on now, the camera will go downstairs.
wouldn't contaminate the ammunition. You wouldn't contaminate the gunpowder. Anything, dirt, they needed it to be clean. Otherwise it might not fire.
Well, ammunition, early gunpowder was very, very sensitive to sparks. So if you work down here, you might be a bit paranoid about an explosion. The floor's made of non-conductive material. There's a thermometer in that door there. You can have a look at it as you go past. This magazine consists of 2 empty chambers, this one and one behind it. And the passage goes around the outside, so you can walk around the passage. In this magazine, you'll notice we didn't have fluorescent lights, did we? If those lights go out, you cannot see a thing. Good job you all carry mobiles with torches on them. But what they would do, they would light the lamps upstairs, and in that magazine and the other one, the chamber, you'll see that they bring them down and lock them in thick plate glass cases in the wall, with the door on the other side, and there's vents in the side and the top where the lamps were vented to the outside air. They didn't ever come in contact with the air in the magazine. The frames of the cases are bronze. Bronze won't spark apparently, and the nails are bronze. Now, there's 2 photos in there. One's of a man in his magazine suit. There they are. They have nothing on them. They put those on them, nothing on them will spark. He's loading the shell cases of the big 6-inch gun, that first big gun we looked at. And the other one is taken in another magazine. You'll notice it's been roofed over for the Second World War. It was a gun press. There's a big ring in the wall with block and tackle. They roofed it over, and he's putting the charges on the shells of the big 6-inch gun. And his name is Lance Bombardier Hughes. But have a look at it. His nickname was Lofty Hughes. He was 6'7", which in those days were giants. Now, and then you can walk around. There's air vents. It doesn't feel like it when you've got about 80 school children down here. But, and I'm going to be in the next chamber. Now, I've got one story to tell you. I don't know whether you can all fit though. So fit in that passage beside it, and you can listen to me, you know. And I'll just tell you a story before we go upstairs about the guns. So head into this chamber and then around. Come down here and listen to get warm in the summer here.
Oh, that's what.
You can sit here if you're early enough, sit at the table. Stop the table.
Kids, TJ, jump up on the table and sit there, mate. You alright?
There's one nail there. Just let anyone sit there.
I'll sit next to the table.
Do you think the guns ever fired in anger? No. But there wasn't any war here, was there? Well, they did fire once in the First World War and once in the Second World War. At the beginning of the First World War, there was a German ship in Melbourne called the Pfalz, P-F-A-L-Z, and they'd just taken on a big load of coal, and they were going to leave the heads with a pilot on board, of course. So at the same time on that day, London radioed Melbourne, and Melbourne radioed the tower here, and the tower communicated with the pilot on board the Pfalz. And the message was, we're at war with Germany, stop that ship. So Phil has written a book about it. Apparently the pilot and the captain of the ship had a big altercation. It nearly came to physical blows. So the tower gave the order to the 6-inch gun on Fort Nepean and it fired a warning shot across the bow of the German ship. And so it was then that they decided to turn around. They dropped anchor at the quarantine, and captain and crew were taken prisoners of war. Now that is recorded as the first British artillery shot fired. Okay, first British artillery shot fired in the First World War. Then came the day of the Second World War, September 1939. War was declared with Germany. All the guns are ready. All the soldiers are being a bit tense. War started. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning and a little ship came sailing in and didn't identify itself. So immediately the order was given from the fire control, and the gun on Fort McKeon fired a warning warning shot. I won't say the wrong word. A warning shot across the bow. Well, they must have got a terrible fright because it was an Australian ship. It was a little ship called the Warrior, and they must have been daydreaming in Bass Strait and didn't know war had broken out. Here they are coming in for the umpteenth time and they get fired on. And to make matters worse, she was on a flood tide. Now, even on a calm day like today, there's a lot of wind but it's fairly calm, the tide's going through that entrance at 10 knots, which is pretty fast. She couldn't do anything but keep going. Now the plan was that if the ship didn't heave to on that first shot, the second shot was to be fired from the ready gun on Queenscliff, where the flagpole is. And years ago, when I was young, I met one of the gunners on the ready gun, and he said, well, we woke up that it was an Australian ship. He said, but when we notified our duty officer, he said he was one of those so-and-so officers that stuck by the book, and he ordered them to fire on the ship a second time. So the poor old gunners, you can't disobey orders. I said, what did you do? They actually did what little boys do when their teacher tells them to do something and they don't want to do it. They went really slow. They dropped the charge, they fiddled around. The Warrior went happily on her way to Melbourne. But this, move away from you, this officer was going to have them court-martialed. They were hauled up before the commanding officer, and he just said, well, did you or did you not refuse to obey an order to fire on that ship? And they had to admit that they had. Anyway, apparently he just looked at the man beside him and said, thank goodness somebody had some common sense. So they didn't get court-martialed, but that is recorded as the first British artillery shot fired in the Second World War. So if you don't remember anything else I've said today, this is our claim to fame. Now to finish the tour, we're going to go back to where we started because I want to show you one more photo and then where I was sitting at the beginning. Hopefully it's not raining. When you walk back, I'm just saying you're not allowed to go on the parade ground. I didn't know anything about this. I used to think, oh well, they want to grow the grass. But apparently parade grounds are sacred. And you don't walk or stroll on them. And my grandson, he's 19, he just joined the Air Force this year. And he did his basic training and he said to me, I was talking to him on the phone, he said, Grandma, we have to march everywhere. We even have to march back to our rooms. So parade grounds are safe. When you walk back, you'll see the old building, the original building that was built for the college, and you'll see an emblem on the front, which is the emblem of the Royal Australian Engineers. It's also a very, very rare emblem. It happens to be the crown of Edward VIII. He wasn't even crowned, was he? He was only on the throne for about 5 months. So you take off at your own speed and I'll catch up to you. All right? Go this way and turn right.
What do you say?
Summer go slow, deep slide.
Done it, then he does. He normally leading he gets very hungry, but it makes sense.
Yep.
Well, it does. And sometimes don't you just work
Or more like Caravanning.
Oh, look at there. I know there's none there.
Yeah, I felt like Caravanning because this is, I don't know if it really housed like army troops and stuff. It was more, yeah, it's more for defence. So it's really just where I had people to man the guns and stuff.
Okay, the little guardhouse has been permanently occupied 24 hours a day ever since it was built. There's a bell in the middle of the doors there, see it on the wall? When the college was here, they used to shine it, it's brass. And we tour guides used to ring it to finish the tour. But now it's classed as a heritage piece, so we're not allowed to touch it. And the guard would walk from the end of the bridge across the moat to the end of the picket fence back. My husband's grandfather, and I'll just explain, I grew up in Brisbane. My father was a soldier, a permanent soldier. And we moved every 2 years. We lived in Musselburgh, we lived in Sydney, and then when I was 17, he got a move to Melbourne, and that's where I met my husband. But he rose up through the ranks during the war and became an officer. But my husband's grandfather, he was a sapper, started here as a sapper in the engineers. And 40 years later, he's about to retire as a sapper in the engineers. I mean, I always thought if you're in the army, you sat through your exams and worked towards a promotion, but not Grandad Jones. He ended up 40 years later as sapper in the engineer. Anyway, they wouldn't let him go out without a strike. So he went out as a lance corporal in the engineers. It's just a job to him. Before you go, I'm just going to pass around a photograph of Australia's greatest soldier. I won't tell you who it is. You might guess. See who can guess. He was from Melbourne. There's a photograph of him here. He's in the part-time artillery. He's sitting in front of the guardhouse. When the war broke out, he went to Gallipoli, and he was a very clever man, and we've got a university named after him and a freeway named after him. You know who that is, don't you? John Monash, Sir John Monash. Oh. There he is when he was a young man. At this stage he was only part-time artillery. He was doing an engineering course and a degree in a law degree in Melbourne. But he went to Gallipoli, and I read his biography. It's really a good read. It's about that thick, but it's excellent. It's called Monash. He went to Gallipoli and he was so disgusted at how Gallipoli became such a bloodbath, you know, and disgusted with the British officers who organised it all. So he was moving up the ladder of promotion. Then he went to France and he fought in France. And this man literally turned the tide of World War I in France. So he's really interesting to read about. Well, thank you so much for your interest. I didn't go very good. I managed to go with such a big crowd. Yeah.
guys. So it's a restore 19th century military fortification dito sa Australia. Nakita niyo naman, we are in Queenscliff and this is our second try because our first try, guys, the other video, the past video, guys, we went there and unfortunately we are out of Filipino time and the gate is closed. So if you are late, guys, if you will be on a tour, be sure that you will be there 15 minutes or 10 minutes before the tour starts. Kasi our first try, the gate is closed. Even though you will knock the gate, guys, they will not open it for you because there's a tour ongoing on. So anyways, so this is our second luck and of course, luckily, we are success to go in the tour. So anyway, you need to book your tickets purchase online because this is very active fort active defense department inside. So they're very strict when it comes in ID. You need to bring your valid ID kasi meron doon security guard at the start of the gate. When they open the gate, they will ask you to, the person will ask your ID. You need to sign in there because they will know who's people coming in the group or in the tour. So it's a guided tour. So it's a professional guided tour and then you will find out or you will discover about the military history, the artillery, the weapons, the base, the heritage buildings, guys. You can see also the view of Melbourne. You can see the view of Mornington Peninsula and other islands, guys. Yes, it was fun. So guys, anyway, highway, that's our Fort Cliff for today's video. I hope you enjoy watching, you learned something today. Plus, you had fun for today's video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for supporting our video. And mega love shout out to each wonderful, beautiful people of the universe. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Like if you did enjoy our video for today. And please do subscribe if you haven't yet. And don't forget to hit the bell button for you to get notified for our next video. And please comment down below if you like this video pa. See you and I see you on my next one. Bye bye, guys. Be good. You take care. Be safe and mwah. Ciao.